Early morning mental, yeah? Let's do this, man. Never back at everyone. Hope you had a nice rest.
You are listening to Leicester Community Radio for Northcom.
Hope you're fully recharging now. And you've gave your gratitude before your feet hit the ground. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man. Another day in the Armageddon. I've been told by certain, what word could I use other than followers? I've been told by certain mirrors to do more of my lectures in the morning and that. I didn't really have one planned today, but seeing as I came sit in my car to have my morning smoke, I might as well just say a little something, man. You know? So I wanted to say, the next time I elaborate on my book, Treasures in the Sand, I'm going to go one by one through the pharaohs, because that's the part we've reached now. We've elaborated on all 5 chapters. So the second half of the book now, like the foundation of the book's done. 5 chapters is your foundation about the history of black people in general, not specifically Egyptians, just Kushites, before Egypt even became a dynastic state. So now in the second half of the book, we're into the Dynastic Times. So we're going to start, we'll have a look at leadership, we'll have a look at the timeline, and also while we're doing that, we'll start scrutinizing these pharaohs one by one. And remember, by the word pharaoh, I mean the great house. So I'm not just talking about the man. We're having a look at the whole house. The man, the wife, the children, the servants of the house, the state of the country, the state the country was left in, the way the people received the pharaoh, the way the pharaoh interacted with the people, the kind of inscriptions he left about his or her legacy. That sort of stuff we're going to be speaking about, yeah? Which is, it's really interesting, man. I would say this is the best part of the book. The book's magic anyway, but just learning who these pharaohs really were is magic. And I've been thinking, how I said, how I've called Treasures in the Sand Volume 1. Volume 2 is actually Between the Lines of History. That's going to continue on from where Treasures in the Sand left off, and elaborate a bit deeper about certain things. So it might even revisit certain themes and go a little bit deeper on it. Like if anybody who's read Treasures in the Sand cover to cover will know that I left the story of King Tut and Akhenaten. It wasn't finished. There wasn't really a final conclusion. You just have to really make up your own mind based on a few different perspectives. But since I've wrote Treasures in the Sand and I've had certain upgrades and spoke to spirit and ancestors, they've actually given me a conclusion to that story now. So you might have seen it on my page a couple of times when I speak about Akhenaten and Tutankhaten or King Tut. But yeah, I've actually concluded that story now based on my research. At the time I was writing Treasures, I was still in the middle of trying to find out exactly what was going on there. So I'll put that conclusion in Between the Lines of History, which I don't think will be out till at least mid-2021, something like that. But yeah, since we're here, I might as well start with the first pharaoh. The first great house we're going to decipher is Pharaoh Menes, or some people just call him Pharaoh Men, and some scholars call him Pharaoh Narmer. I want to make clear here as well that some scholars actually feel that Pharaoh Menes and Pharaoh Narmer is 2 different people. But let's just run with the idea that it's one man and he's got different names, either Narmer, Men, or Menes. He's known as the first Egyptian pharaoh, the first one to reunify the land. So like the first official pharaoh, that's the story that Tamahu give us, Caucasians. He was the first pharaoh to reunify Egypt, or unify the 2 lands, northern Egypt and southern Egypt, or upper Egypt and lower Egypt, right? They say this happened in 3100 BC, which is roughly just about 5,000 years ago, yeah? Okay, so the problem with that is, according to our own ancestors and our own African perspective, one, Pharaoh Menes was not the first pharaoh to reunify. Was not the first pharaoh. The truth is, he was the first pharaoh to reunify the land, but it was unified before Pharaoh Menes. Okay. Secondly, there was other pharaohs that reigned before Menes, that they didn't necessarily unify the whole of the kingdom, like the two lands, but they were known as Suten, the pharaoh. They had all the emblems and symbolisms of the pharaoh with the crown and the Sarek, which is the rectangle with the Horus bird sat on top of the rectangle, and then in the bottom half of the rectangle, after the first dynasty, they started writing their names inside of that Sarek. So that was an official symbol of royalty. Also, the palace facade, your waz staff, and your flail. You know, like the shepherd's tools, the crook and the flail. Like all these are tools of kingship, right? So these pharaohs, based on the emblems, were pharaohs before Menes. Now what happened, and let's take it to 41,000, yeah, 41,250 BC, yeah? This is the date that, according to black people, this is when the reunifying of Egypt happened. 41,250 BC, okay? So we're talking 43,000 years ago. If we add on this, we're in the year 2020. So we're talking 43,020 years ago, something like that, yeah? Pharaoh Menes reunified the kingdom. What does that mean? There was already a pharaoh or an institution of pharaoh running right there in Kustul. Kustul is right near Abu Simbel, where you get the Aswan and the Nubia village, and you get the temple at Abu Simbel, built by Pharaoh Ramesses II. Kustul was the first area to come with the institution of pharaoh. When they dug up around Kustul and around the tombs in the 70s, they found various relics that testify to the presence of a pharaonic institution in that southern part of the border where Sudan and Egypt is, before Egypt had pharaohs. So that shows that these pharaohs came from the south. Now they had names mentioned, these pharaohs. They're not just like unknowns. One of them was named Terraneta. One of them was named Agrub, which translates as scorpion. And we're going to center in on Agrub, because Pharaoh Agrub was, you could say, the one before Menes, and the one who was, you could say he was a match to Menes at the time when they clashed, because they clashed. Something happened where Menes and Agrub, because a lot of the time it's like Dr. Malachi York says, the pharaohs don't necessarily reign one after one after one after one after one, like the Egyptology timeline tells you. Some pharaohs were reigning at the same time in different regions. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's just an assumption to think that they came one after one. But anyway, in the time of Menes, Menes was around when Agrub was around, and they clashed because one of them was the ruler of the north and one of them was the ruler of the south. I think it was Menes was the ruler of the south, and Agrub had already gone up into Egypt and was the ruler of the north, in northern Egypt, yeah? So if you go by Dr. Ben's teachings, Justified True Voice, rest in peace, Dr. Ben, the master teacher said that they had a dispute because they wanted to reunify the kingdom, to unify the two lands, rather than have two rulers, have one ruler of both lands. So it came down to, okay, we're gonna have a war, mate, and whoever wins this war is either you're gonna end up ruling the south and the north, or I'm gonna end up ruling the north and the south. Like, it is what it is, isn't it? So they went to war, and Pharaoh Menes came out on top, and that's how Pharaoh Menes, that's why he's known as the unifier of the two lands. It was then at that point that the word Suten, or the word, not Suten, the word Pharaoh for great house, began to be used. Menes and his household was the first household to be called the Pharaoh of the two lands, the great house of the two lands, okay? Now, back to Pharaoh Agrub. Stuff has been dug up on Pharaoh Agrub, where my man had his own, I don't want this video to be too long, my storage is all mad and that, and I'm doing it as a video and then uploading it because my data's out until I get back to my yard. So Yeah, they found records for Pharaoh Agrub, Pharaoh Scorpion, and there were records on tax, law, property, um, transactions like trade. Yeah, that might sound simple, but what that means is in that region, in Egypt, even before Pharaoh Menes, they already had a whole civilization. See, they try and come like Sumeria was the first civilization and Egypt didn't start till 3100 BC. And then they don't tell you that when Egypt started, it was already fully functioning. It means that none of these institutions would have had to have thousands of years in place before they could be perfected in that way. For them to be writing and having records on trade and taxes and astronomy and medicine and law and property, do you understand? That meant that that shit must have been running for thousands of years for them to have developed that system there. Do you know what I mean? It's like forensics. If a police forensics officer comes into the place, he can say, yo, that guy somebody got killed there because there's blood there, a blood splashed there, so the geezer was standing here. You know, all the specifics. It's the same when you're dealing with archaeology or paleontology and them kind of stuff. Just from the forensics on the site, you can tell what was happening. So just from reading about, yo, they got laws, they got penal system, meaning justice system, courts and that. They've got fucking trade going on with agriculture and stuff. They've been studying astronomy and stuff like that. And that was Pharaoh Agrub. So we're not even talking about Pharaoh Menes. Do you understand? We're talking about, they call them proto-dynastic kings or pre-dynastic kings. These proto-dynastic kings, it means before Egypt was even a fucking dynastic country. Do you understand? And what they try and do is brush them under the carpet because, like I said, they were found in Kustul on the border of Sudan. They are coming from Meroe and Napata. They are coming from Mother Kush or Tarseti, the mother culture. And so they spread out going up north. Maybe there was too much people down south, so they needed more space. So certain tribes started to spread out because when you read Robert Bouval and Imhotep the African and Black Genesis, he says in there that Menes came from a group of Kushites called the A group. You see, like black people in that region, Kushites, they split them into groups, subgroups, innit? So you have like A group Kushites, B group Kushites, C group Kushites. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you have different tribes like Afar tribes, Oromo tribes, fucking Hamar tribes, Shuluk tribes. There's different types of Kushites. Do you see what I'm saying? When Menes and them moved into Egypt region, they was known, that group of Kushites is the A group Kushites. They founded the kingdom of Meroe, Napata, Kemet, you understand? But then you have other Kushites like C group Kushites who are a bit different, and so they founded the kingdom of Kerma, and Kerma is probably older than Meroe and Napata. Do you understand? And Kerma is kind of like Bloods and Crips. Kerma was always, not always, but a lot of time it came into conflict with Meroe and Kush, and they used to raid Kush in that. This is our own African brothers, Kushites. Do you understand? But they're a different group. They got a different mentality. They might even have a different outlook on the God concept. So they was always like on the bottom part of fucking Sudan, like southern Sudan, yeah, is what you call the kingdom of Kerma, the ancient kingdom of Kerma. And these men are rough. These men will attack the kingdom and that. So we had to keep them in check. A lot of time pharaohs came down from Egypt all the way down to like the sixth cataract, which would be Kerma kingdom. You get to the first and second cataract in the Sudan, that's considered still part of Egypt. That's where you get Napata and Gebel Barkel, and fucking further down you would get Meroe, right near the southern, right near the border of the North Sudan. So when you go to the extreme of North Sudan, where it's nearly going to become South Sudan, that's where Meroe is, like in the heart of Sudan. You know, the southern part of Sudan is the ancient kingdom of Kerma. You have different types of Kushites. So Pharaoh Agrub and Menes and them, or Narmer if you want to say, they was from the A group Kushites. Do you understand? They got a lot of Oromo tribes that was in that A group Kushites, and they only lost hold of Egypt when the Phoenicians started coming in. And Phoenicians are other black people, like Asiatic black people. It came to a point where they actually took over, and that happened, you could say, by the fourth dynasty for a brief period, and then by after the sixth dynasty, it went back to Kushites dynasties from Meroe, like the 11th and 12th dynasties, Pharaoh Mentuhotep II, black as night. We call him the Black Lion of Waset in Treasures in the Sand. And then you have the Amenemhets, Amenemhet 1, 2, 3, and then you have the Senruset, or who the Greeks call a Sesostris. Sesostris 1, 2, 3. These are black Kushite, A group Kushite tribes, again taking back Egypt. And then after the 18th dynasty, when you get into the 19th and the fucking 20th dynasty, you also have an influx of Phoenicians coming in. Do you understand? And then by the, you could say 23rd, 24th dynasty, you get a lot, they took over. They started like having the main influence in Egypt. The Kushites lost, the Oromo tribes and Kushites lost hold of Egypt. And so they went back south. And so they came back up in the time of the 25th dynasty. This is the same A group Oromo tribes that originally founded Egypt. So I hope that makes elaborates a bit on Suten Menes. He doesn't really tell you much about his wife or anything, but this guy was a mastermind engineer, because he actually sailed down the Nile in boats, yeah, because there was Neanderthals influxing into the region in Kemet. So they came from Kustul, like fuck this, they came from Kustul and Neken. Neken is the Greek Heroncopolis, which means Falcon City. It's the same city that Imhotep Shilneken came from, do you understand, in his later time. But this was the gateway into Egypt, from Kush into Egypt. They built that first, Neken. And it's got similar architecture to Saqqara or Saqqara, where you get the step pyramid of Imhotep and stuff. You got the same facaded complex that surrounds the step pyramid in Saqqara, the same thing in Neken. And Pharaoh Menes had a tomb in was it Memphis? He was either buried in Memphis or the ancient city of Anu, yeah, Heliopolis, but I think it was Memphis. So he had a tomb in Memphis and he had monuments in Memphis, but his main tomb and his main monuments were in Neken in the south. And they tried and sweep over that too, because that indicates that this guy didn't come from no north or from Asia. He came from the south where his ancestors were. Do you understand? Yeah, so shit. So I was gonna, what was I saying there? Yeah, so they lost hold of that in the Kushites lost hold of Egypt, the Roman tribes, and they lost out to their, you could say, cousins, the Phoenicians, who are Asiatic black people or Afro-Asians, you understand? And they took over power, and then they lost power, yeah? They took over power in the time of Cleopatra, do you understand? And you could consider even her a Phoenician, kind of like black, mixed up Greek. And then her son, Cleophas, he wanted to be the ruler of Egypt. And at that time, they had lost control of Egypt to the white people. So he becomes your Jesus character. I'm talking about their fake Jesus, this Isa Panthera, where they worship the Sphinx. And that was cat holy, the holy cat. And that became Catholic or cat holistic. You understand? The cat worshippers. That's where that began, that Catholic shit. A lot of people don't know that. But so yeah, the story spirals, but I just wanted to elaborate on Pharaoh Menes. That's what I was saying. He was an engineer. For him to do what he did, he had to divert the Nile. So the ancient Nile is not the same as the modern Nile right now. In ancient times, the Nile ran down a different course. But the engineer, the first Suten Menes, he diverted the Nile so he could make more land. And that, what he did with that more land was build the city of Memphis. To build that city, he diverted the waters of the Nile as an engineer, built up this massive city surrounded by thick white walls, and that became his fortress city. In later times, the pharaohs moved their coronation festival where they were made king. They moved it from the ancient city of Anu right to Memphis, to the holy city of Memphis. Do you understand? So that was my little brief about Pharaoh Menes. I'm gonna cut it there because my battery's a bit short. It's already a 20-minute thing now. I'll upload it, yeah. Yo, bless up, yeah. Have a good day.